Hey guys, Mackay here with Ironside Ranch, and today we're going to show you how to take something like what we have behind us here, this nice fresh this forest, this thick forest here, and we're in the south here, so our forests are a little bit thicker. But we're going to show you how to take something like this and turn it into nice lush green pasture, and we're going to do it over the course of a couple years. It's going to take about 2 years to get there, but the important fact is that we're going to do it with no heavy equipment, and we're going to do it without really breaking our bank. A little bit of capital investment, but not much. So pretty minimal compared to what it would cost us to get this done otherwise. So stick with us and we'll go over the process. Okay, so anybody can turn this into pasture relatively quickly if you're willing to take a mulcher out here, get all the underbrush mulched, get the trees cut, and you can actually mulch the trees if you want to. But anybody can turn this into pasture if you're willing to do that. Put some fertilizer on it, put some seed on it, and water it and go. That's a relatively pain-free process. That's a relatively pain-free process. My gosh. And it doesn't take that long to do. It can be done in about a year if you do it that way. But it's really expensive. Mulching, if you guys don't know mulching, the typical price for mulching you're going to see is about $100 or $1,500 a day, give or take. I've had some companies that'll do it as low as $1,000 a day. The general rule is the price starts at $1,500, and so mulching is an expensive option. And then we've got to fertilize it. Then we've got to get a seed drill in there and plant our grass and everything. And it just takes a significant amount of time. So there's a lot better options for doing this, and the best option that I can think about doing this with is using pigs and pigs and goats, but predominantly pigs. But let's back up before we get there, because before we get to the pigs, we have to prepare the land to accept the pigs. And so the very first step that we're going to do is we're going to log the land. Okay, so logging the land is not actually the easiest feat to accomplish, especially if you have a small plot of land. If you have 200 acres of hardwoods, you'll find a logger in about 10 minutes with a quick Google search, and you'll have somebody out there in a day and they'll clear cut the whole thing. But when we're looking at something that's 20 acres, which is what we have here, or say something like 40 acres, something that's a smaller plot of land, something typically less than 100 acres, and maybe it doesn't have that much on there because it was all natural regrowth from a logging operation 20 years ago, which is what we were dealing with here. At that point in time, it was a little bit harder for us to find a logger to come out here. We eventually did, but it took us about a year to find somebody that was willing to come out here. Now, we weren't in any hurry for it, so it wasn't a big deal at the time. Now we're getting a little bit more advanced in our operation here. We're trying to get a little bit more cleared, and so luckily we found him when we did. Victor is a one-man band show for this logging, so it's a little bit harder to find him because he comes out here and he does a lot of it by hand. It's still, he told me he's got a skidder, and he bought that a year ago. Before then, he used a bobcat for pulling the logs out of the woods. He had a flatbed trailer that went behind his little pickup. I mean, he really worked his tail off, and now he's got a little bit bigger operation. But it takes him a little bit longer. It's going to take him probably 6 months to do our whole property here and get everything that he wants up there. But he leaves behind a little bit more because, again, we're not as big of an operation. If we're a larger operation, we have better options to get somebody over here that can pile the slash piles up. We can then burn them. They can spread them out so that they mulch real quick. There's a lot of options there. But what we end up with when we're done logging is we're going to end up with something that looks like this. We're going to have some dead trees here that weren't worth anything. We're going to have still some scraggly trees like what we got over here, and we've just got this kind of barren wasteland of trees and brush and slash. Obviously, we can't go over this with a bush hog unless you've got a much bigger tractor. This is something that needs to be go over with a forestry grinder or a mulcher, whatever you want to call it, if you really want to get this gone right away. And so it's a bit much to do with the tractor. But what we can do is we can come in here with our tractor, and we've been pulling out all the firewood. Now, we burn wood, so we haven't been taking any additional trees down. We're gonna address that here in a little bit. All that we have been doing is pulling out everything that was cut, that was left behind, that's firewood sized. Then the rest of it we've been piling into slash piles that we're going to burn, or we've been spreading it, letting it decompose. The best option is to use a chipper. If you've got one for your tractor, that'll take those down. You can chip a lot of this stuff, and it's great for your soil. Visit Joel Soliton's page if you want a little bit more information on that. But the chipper, they cost money. That's $2,000, $2,000 or $3,000 for a 3-point chipper for the tractor. We don't have one of those yet. We'll be adding that next year, but as of right now, this is our only option, is to either let it decompose naturally or put it in slash piles and burn it. Depending on where you're at, you may have problems putting it in slash piles and burning it because you might be under a burn ban. You also may have issues where if you're further up north or further up in the mountains or something along those lines where it takes things a lot longer to decompose, that might be more of a problem for you. Here things decompose by the 2-2-2 rule. Anything less than 2 inches around, 2 feet off the ground will decompose in about 2 years. So we don't worry about those minor things, they go away fairly quickly. My folks up in Colorado deal a little bit more with this issue because not only can they not burn because they're under a burn ban, but stuff takes forever to decompose up in the mountains and there's no rainfall to deteriorate it, and they don't have termites to get rid of the wood. Here, like I said, everything will decompose. The majority of this will be gone in about 2 years with only the big things like what I'm sitting on right now left behind. The rest of it will clear out, and a lot of it will be gone within about a year. But we also have to keep it from regrowing back and from these little offshoots and these shrub bushes from coming up because, again, we can't bush hog it right yet. It's just a little bit too much to bush hog. So once we've pulled out all of our slash and all of our firewood, we're going to end up with an area that looks something like this. At that point in time, the next option for us is to get our perimeter fencing done. So what we've done here is we've started clearing everything like this here in the center to get some of our firewood out, and then we started moving along and we're going to start clearing that path along the property line so we can get our perimeter fence up. Once that perimeter fence is up, we're going to pop the pigs in here. Now the pigs on this particular run are going to be a little bit different than what we would normally do. Normally we're going to get good rotational grazing in with our pigs. We're going to let them rotate around from pasture to pasture. They'll eat all the shrubs, all the grubs and everything in there, make the pasture nice and healthy, and we don't want to overgraze them because we don't want them to leave a huge disturbance in the footprint. This time is kind of an exception. This first one is kind of an exception. We're going to overgraze the death out of this area. We're going to let them tear everything up, and we want them to destroy as much as they possibly can. I want them rooting up the vegetation. I want them to kill everything in here except for the big trees because obviously we don't want those to grow back. So the kudzu root balls, I want them ripping out. I want them ripping out the root balls of these Chinese privet that we have that's invasive here. I want them to get all that out, and they're great at doing that. They're like little rototillers that'll just go through and tear everything to shreds. Any of the stumps, after about 6 months when those stumps start rotting, the pigs will tear them apart. They'll bite them, they'll nudge them, they'll nuzzle them, they'll get those stumps ripped out of the ground real well. And so we're going to overgraze this area. So here and down here we're going to do, this is about 1.5 acres that we're going to be putting them on here, and I'm going to put about 15 to 20 pigs in this spot for 6 months. And so I'm going to raise them out start to finish here on this property on this 1.5 acres, and they're just going to graze it to death. By the time they're done here, they're going to, any of the shrubs that are left behind, they're going to trample into the ground to be decomposed in the mud. They're going to rip up all the roots like we talked about, all the root balls. They're going to rip up a lot of the stumps. There'll still be a lot of stumps left, but they'll get a lot of them out of here. And they'll trample down the slash piles, any of the smaller slash piles. They'll trample those into the ground. So this will basically look like craters of the moon with a few trees in it. That's exactly what we want, because then we've got 6 months of manure from the pigs. We've got all the a lot of the weeds rooted up, and we will then be at the point to where we can bush hog this property, and that's the goal that we're trying to get to. So we want this looking like craters of the moon for that first time. Then after that, proceeding after that, then we're going to stick more to something like a Joe Soliton model where we do 900 pounds of feed, I think is what he says, per pig per half acre or something like that before you move them. I don't remember his exact math on there. We'll have to look that up, but we can use a different method like that to graze them through, so we're not overgrazing the area and we're allowing the area to recover. This first time though, I want to stick these pigs in here, and I want them to be rototillers through the whole area, and I want them just to demolish everything in here and really crush this down well. After a few months on that forested land, we're going to end up with a ground that looks a lot like this, where you can see where the pigs have all come in here, they've rooted everything up, but it's nice loose soil. There's lots of biomatter in there, there's lots of their compost in there, and so it's nice and mixed into the soil. And like I said, they're like giant rototillers coming in here and just rooting everything up and getting everything buried and pushed into the soil really well. We're going to add a ton of biomatter to the soil. It's even better if we've got the wood chips on top of them, on top of that soil. If we've got the chipper to add that to the soil for them to go through. But again, they will eat all the grubs. They'll devour any of the grasses and stuff like that that's in there. Any of that biomass that's in there, they'll devour that, and then they'll add it back in the form of compost. You can see right here, he's rooting this up right in front of us, so you can see exactly what he's looking for. It doesn't look to us like there's any food there, but they're able to find it, and they will dig in here and get all this out. They just do a wonderful job of actually getting us some good food and some good pasture land. And then finally we end up with something like this, something with nice grass going to seed for us, and giving us a good clean pasture here. Now obviously this takes some time to get to because we've got to wait for it to grow. We've got to let that biomatter keep filling and refilling. We've got to cut this down and let that grass, that mat get down further into the soil, and we've got to raise other animals on it. Obviously we don't want just pigs. Pigs do a good job tearing it up, but they also will tear up your pasture, so we got to rotate some other animals through there. So at that point in time we have a couple options after the pigs have done their clearing. We can plant seed. That's certainly an option, but seed costs money, and if we allow that those grasses that are native to the area to naturally come through, the grass seed is there. It's in the ground. It's going to blow in from neighboring areas. It's going to blow in from your yard. The grass seed is always there, and there's native grasses there that'll allow that to all come through. So then after that, it's just good pasture management, more so than actually developing the pasture. And eventually we end up with a nice green pasture like this, where it looks like we painted the ground green. Everything looks great. And we've got those nice solid grasses coming through, and we've got good seed heads on the end of our grasses. We can put whatever we want on here to actually capitalize on our farm and on the venture of us actually producing grass. Right? It's a Greg Judy philosophy that we're grass farmers. That's what we do, is that we're raising grass. And then finally we need to build our silvopasture from this, and so we need to find our areas that are going to have shade, that are going to have trees, and we want to make sure that we're leaving some trees there, or that we're planting trees that benefit us. These are some pear trees that we don't particularly like, so these are probably going to come out, but we do want to look at options with things like oak trees that'll drop lots of nuts into the soil and allow our pigs to clean those up. That's great for them. Nuts are great for all these animals because they have a lot of fat in them, a lot of fat content, so it's great for dairy cows, it's great for meat cows, it's great for pigs. It really helps them put on weight, and it gives a lot of nutrients into a small area. So nut trees are a big benefit. We'll be going back through and backfilling a lot of these pastures with good nut trees of our choosing, predominantly with oak, because oak grows really well here, but lots of things grow well here. Chestnuts do here. They say to stay away from the walnuts because they say the animals won't eat them. We have not tested that method, so we'll probably plant a few walnuts and see what happens there. But those are the things that we want to look at. We want to look at what trees do well here. Orchard trees do well, really well in areas that you're going to graze pigs and poultry through, because those pigs and poultry will eat not only the orchard fruits that fall on the ground, but they will also eat a lot of the bugs and the pests and stuff that are attracted to that. So it brings kind of a double duty cycle there. So we want to take advantage of those trees. So don't just leave the trees that are there because they're nice and pretty trees. We want to add some trees of our own choosing to there to actually help supplement that. So again, nut trees are a great option to add to your silvopasture. So are fruit trees, but we want something that produces something for our farm, whether we're planting black locusts so that we can get fence posts later, or whether or hedge apples, or whether we're planting something along the lines of an oak that'll drop those acorns on the ground for our animals to eat. So I hope that helps, guys. Like I said, I really wanted to show you guys how we take this land and convert it into pasture without spending $10,000 on heavy equipment, getting mulchers in here, getting seed drills in here, and dropping a bunch of fertilizer on it. Obviously that's a method, but that I don't believe that is the best method, and it certainly is not the cheapest method. So this gives us a much more natural way of doing it, and we get to take advantage of the land while we're converting it. That's the big thing here. We make money off the logs, we can make money off the firewood, we can save money by burning the firewood, we can make money off of the pigs that are converting the pasture over, we can make money by throwing goats in there to help take care of some of the brush. We can make lots of money off of this by converting these pastures over instead of spending money. We turn a liability into an asset by using this method, and that's really what we're trying to do. We want to turn a liability into an asset. Your house is a liability. A homestead, a farm is an asset, and that's what we want to look at, and we want to develop this area so that way this creates something that is making us money, not costing us money. So thanks again for watching, guys. Make sure and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Like us on Facebook, because we do post some information there, and we'll see y'all next week.